Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are here. We start today's program with our very eminent speaker, Mr. Rajan Anandan, who's MD, Google India, and on a very interesting topic on digitizing India. May I invite Neeta Puchra, President Flow, to felicitate Rajan Anandan. Neeta Puchra ji, could you just felicitate him? Just a little administrative thing. We were to be on the second floor, but the ACs are not working there, so we shifted up. So we said that it'll be a nice room over here, at least you're all comfortable. You can't sweat it out in this room. May I invite Ritu Vadera, governing body member, to give a green certificate to Rajan Anandan. We don't give flowers to you, we plant trees in your name. May I invite Neeta ji, President Flow, to give the welcome address and also introduce our speaker of the day.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Rajan Anandan, VP and MD, Google India, past President's Flow, Neena ji and Usha ji, Archana Garodia Gupta, Senior Vice President, Ritu Vadera, Governing Body Member, Dr. Kalra Prakash, Executive Director, my dear Flow members and friends from the media. I'm extremely delighted to welcome Mr. Rajan Anandan, Vice President and Managing Director, Google India. Mr. Anandan holds an MSc from Stanford and a BSc from MIT Boston. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Anandan. In his role at Google, Mr. Anandan is focused on expanding the internet ecosystem in India, increasing adoption among consumers and businesses, and accelerating the innovation ecosystem. His career includes global leadership roles at Microsoft, Dell, McKinsey & Company. Prior to Google, Mr. Rajan was Managing Director of Microsoft India, responsible for all aspects of Microsoft software, OEM and services businesses in India. Rajan Anandan wears multiple hats, especially as an angel investor funding startups in India. He is a super angel and a super investor. Educate and empower, this is the theme for this year. I believe this will enable us to create a powerful impact on our society and support the cause of nation building. In conjunction with this theme, today's session has been conceptualized with the objective to educate ourselves on how digitization is changing our lives and empower and equip ourselves with the knowledge pertaining to it. In the words of Walt Disney, we keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we are curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. The quote resonates very strongly with me today, as I feel Mr. Anandan will open new doors for all of us. Google is synonymous with the internet. A day without Google is something which we can't imagine today. It is the most visited website in the world, with over 54% of the search engine market receiving about 1 billion searches per day. We would all agree with Jimmy Wales, co-founder of Wikipedia, when he said, "If it isn't on Google, it doesn't exist." I read an article recently which encapsulates the essence of Google, and I quote, Imagine a time when an infinite amount of information could not be accessed as an app on our smartphone. Imagine a time where doing research meant going to the library and searching through card catalogs. Imagine a time when discovering new friends and new places meant flipping through the television and landing on other cultures from the Discovery Channel. Without the ultimate media innovations of Google, tasks that take a matter of seconds would have taken hours and maybe even days. Mr. Anandan, our sincere thanks to you for being with us today. And we look forward to something which we discovered over coffee, Healthify Me, an app which we incidentally just discovered a few minutes ago. We request him to tell us about that also. Healthify Me. I leave it on him to elaborate, but it is fantastic from what I have heard a little bit. So we look forward to a fascinating and insightful session on digitization. I would like to take this opportunity to especially welcome. We have members who have made it from the Northeast. Ms. Jayashree Varna, our governing body member. Bangalore, Mr. Ati Dhandania, again Senior Vice Chairperson, who made all the way to be with us on this special day. And I would like to take this opportunity to really thank Ritu Vadera, governing body member, for her wholehearted support in this event and for hosting the tasty lunch today. And to each one of you present here today for the gift of your time. Thank you so much for all being here.
Great, thank you for the warm welcome. And I think this idea of planting trees is a fascinating one. I think we should make that sort of standard practice all across the country, much better than giving flowers. Good morning, everyone. Delighted to be here. I wanted to thank the Flow Governing Council for inviting me and for Mrs. Vadera for being very persistent. I think the great thing about, I know why Flow is probably, one of the reasons Flow is so successful is pure and simple persistence. She's been incredibly persistent to make sure that I get here. So, what I'm going to do is talk about digitizing India, but also maybe what I'll do is start off by sharing with you how technology is changing around the world and how quickly changes in technology are impacting lives, and they're impacting a very large number of lives around the world. And then I'll move into what's happening with the internet in India, how that's impacting consumer behavior, how that's impacting businesses, and hopefully we'll carve out a fair bit of time where you can ask questions that you might have.
Before we start off, could I request you to please switch off your mobiles?
Actually, they should leave their phones on, just put them on silent. It'd be weird to have a discussion around the internet with your phones off. So what we now just say is put it on silent, or just tell it to go on silent. So what I'm going to do is let's start off with the global trends around technology. As many of you know, technology is accelerating, right? And it's remarkable even for us who live in the world of technology to see how quickly technology is accelerating. If you even go back to when I was in university, which was a long time ago, 20 years ago, the idea of the internet, I was working on the internet. I didn't quite know it was going to become the internet in the early 90s. But today, if you look at what's not just happened to the internet, but what's happening to the next set of technologies that are upon us, which I'll talk about some of them. It's really, what is amazing is just the pace at which it's accelerating. A lot of folks ask us about, tell us about the future. And, in our world, the future is already here. And if you look at the emerging technologies that are being experimented with, that are being used by, very small numbers of consumers or businesses, that really tells you what's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years. So, to be able to project what might happen over the next 3, 4, 5 years is actually not very difficult in our industry, because all you have to do is, what's happening with experimental technologies. Some of it will morph and change, etc. So in many ways, the future is here, right? So I think the first theme of this talk is everything is accelerating, especially when it comes to technology, and the future is here. And I'll share some examples of what I mean by that. Now here's some data. Now at Google, we like lots of data. I realize some of these slides have lots of numbers and they're quite small. And what this looks at is over the last, looking at the last 5 or 6 big technology shifts particularly when they come to how consumers connect and communicate, how many years has it taken for a specific technology to reach 1 billion consumers around the world? Right? So if you look at landline telephones, I know I'm looking around the room, I think there are probably about half of this room that doesn't know what a landline phone is. That's okay. I grew up with them. Actually, they kind of didn't exist when I was born, and then by now they don't exist anyway. So it took 110 years for landline telephones to be used by 1 billion consumers. Okay? So that was in many ways sort of one of the technologies that was early that actually reached 1 billion consumers. Then if you look at television, hopefully all of you still do use television, although we don't have a television at home. Took 40 years to reach 1 billion consumers. So compare landline phones with television, it took half as long for television around the world, and this is not India, this is global data, to reach 1 billion consumers. If you look at the mobile phone, mobile connectivity, I'm talking about voice phones, right? 600 million Indians actually talk on mobile devices today. Talk, not data, but talk. Mobile phones took only 22 years to reach 1 billion consumers around the world. So half the time that it took landline phones, it took for mobile phones. And then if you look at the internet, it took 14 years from the launch of the internet for the internet to reach 1 billion consumers around the world. And then if you look at what's probably the latest technology to kind of be upon us, which is smartphones. Essentially, it's a computer in your hand. It has taken only 8 years for smartphones to go from 0 consumers using smartphones to over 1 billion consumers using smartphones in the world. So as you look at this data, it's quite startling, right? Because every new wave of technology has taken half as long to reach 1 billion consumers as the previous technology. And this has profound implications for both consumers as well as businesses. And then obviously if you're in our industry, the big implication is you have to make sure you identify the next big thing, and you have to be very sure that you're on it very, very quickly. Because before we know it, it reaches 1 billion consumers. And I think as consumers, I hear a lot of feedback saying, wow, things are changing so quickly from businesses, and especially if you're in traditional businesses, I hear from, I'm sure many of you are promoters of your own companies. I hear that, wow, it's changing so quickly. Well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is the change is going to continue. The not so great news is it's accelerating. So I think you've got to make sure, especially if you're consumers, you should make sure that you're embracing these technologies, using them, getting to know how to use them. But if you're in businesses, it's even more important, because many of your consumers who are your customers, who you're selling your products and services to, are essentially the ones that are driving these changes. So probably the one thing you could assume is that the next big wave of technology will probably go from 0 to 1 billion users in half the time that it took smartphones. It took smartphones about 8 years, so maybe it's going to be less than 5 years. And time will tell, because really time is only about 3 or 4 years away in terms of what that could be. So that's the first thing about acceleration and how quickly these technologies are being embraced. Now I want to shift to talking about the future is here, right? So today we all know that these devices have become pervasive. How many of you have a smartphone in the room? Right? Just about everybody, right? Good. If you don't, you should get one, because 2 billion people around the world have one, and they're actually spending, at least in India, they're spending about 3 hours a day. Every person who's got a smartphone is spending about 3 hours a day on it. Now the question then becomes, what's the future? Well, the future is here, right? The next wave of innovation really on the consumer side of things is coming from what are called wearable devices. How many of you have a Fitbit or some form of health wearable device, right? 3 or 4 of you, right? So that is an example of a wearable device. It's something that you wear that measures what you do. It usually connects to a smartphone. It tracks what you can do. Another example of a wearable is Google Glass. How many of you have seen Google Glass? So hopefully many of you have read about Google Glass. Okay, a few of you. Read about it, okay. So the simple way you should think about Google Glass is we've taken a lot of the computing power that's on this device and we put it on a pair of glasses, right? So that now what you can do with it is today if you want to take a picture, you can either take your camera out, very few people do that. You take your cell phone out, you got to take, you got to open it up, unlock the security key, you got to open up your camera app, then you got to point, shoot, click, right? Well, with Google Glass, that whole process is much simpler because I can look at this audience and I can say, take a picture, or I can say Google now and then click on the site and I've taken the picture. I could, if we had enough bandwidth in this country, say, oh, I'm just going to live stream this whole discussion. So I say Google record, boom, and then I'll say now put it on YouTube, and I could record this whole discussion. If I got really bored with this discussion, which is listening to myself, which I can sometimes, I could actually say email, and it'll start showing my email. So while I speak to you, I can actually read my email. When I'm driving, I don't have to look at my navigation system or open up my phone and try to figure out where I'm going. I could actually see maps on Google Glass. So essentially what wearables is taking things that you wear, your glasses, your watches. How many of you have a smart watch? Any of you? Okay, so I see 2 or 3 of you have a smart watch. Your watches are all going to be smart. Now I know some of my friends are a little, kind of, very upset about this because they can't really wear a tag here anymore. They can, but it's not going to be very cool because the tag is only going to tell you the time and the date and maybe the time zone, and that's really not that interesting because what you really want to know is who's around you and what are they doing, and so on and so forth. And so smart watches is where you bring computing to your watches. People have started building shoes that can measure how many steps you walk, and if you're not walking enough steps, it'll alert your computer that hey, maybe you should walk faster or walk more or whatever. So wearables is essentially taking computing, which has really been first on a very big device, then on a laptop, then on a smartphone, now to pretty much everything you wear. And the good thing, and the reason I say the future is now is because all these devices that I'm talking about are already here. Some of them are being sold in very small quantities, like Google Glass. You could buy them in the US. Radhika, my wife, has one here. We are not yet selling them in India. At some point we will. But watches. Many of you have Fitbit. Smart watches have been launched. A whole bunch of people are now wearing them, and so on and so forth. Now, the real question is how quickly will these devices that are called wearable devices get to 1 billion users? Well, actually, that is not hard to tell because I just shared a slide with you on the page before that says the next wave of technology will get to 1 billion users in about half the time that it has. That has taken the previous wave of technology, which was smartphones. So you should assume that these devices will very, very rapidly penetrate across the world. Now, in terms of glass and the amazing things that you can do with glass, as I said, I've given you some of the very basic use cases. That is what the people who own Google Glass today use it for: taking pictures, recording something, checking email, and so on and so forth, which is sort of what you do today with a smartphone. But I also thought I'd share with you a video here of how it's being used today. The sound is not great.
Okay, Glass, record a video.
This is it. We're on in 2 minutes.
Okay, Glass, hang out with the Flying Club.
Google photos of tiger heads. You ready? You ready?
Right there. Okay, Glass, take a picture.
That is awesome.
Okay, Glass, record a video.
First exit.
Cool. Stay delicious. 5. Arrow.
Google jellyfish.
So those are just that's what you can do today with Google Glass. And I think what's interesting is that's how quickly technology is evolving. And this is a product that really didn't exist 12 months ago. And what you can assume is that technology will get better and better. It'll get smaller and smaller. You can put it on all kinds of devices, and you can do amazing things with it. Right? So that's on the consumer side. What's also interesting, though, of what's happening with technology and particularly software is it's beginning to impact industries outside of traditionally what we call digital industries, right? So I don't know how many of you still buy CDs. Anybody still buy CDs to listen to music? Nobody buys CDs, right? I know some of you probably still have a few CDs at home. But, you know, like it used to be everybody bought CDs to listen to music, and then we started downloading music, and now you can stream music, right? So that's just one example of a digital industry, because music is a digital product. You can digitally distribute it. Books is another example. You know, it used to be you had all these bookstores in the US, and Barnes & Nobles is now bankrupt, and the only place you can actually buy books is basically online bookstores. Books is a digital product. So you can see why the internet impacted those kinds of industries. But what we are now going to see is software impact more traditional industries in very fundamental ways, right? And the reason we're seeing that is because software is very, very powerful, and you can program software to do all kinds of things. An industry in many ways that hasn't changed for 50 years is the automotive industry. You know, cars, they get better, they get fancier, they get more expensive for sure. But fundamentally, the car hasn't changed. I mean, it's changed in that now with Elon Musk, it's changing because now you don't need gas. You can have, you know, you can drive electric cars. That's a big change. You can have cars that kind of go 100 miles, 200 miles without refilling. That's been changed. You know, the look and feel has changed, the speed has changed, but fundamentally, the design or the idea of what a car is hasn't changed. Software is changing all of it. So imagine a car that drives itself. Imagine that when I'm done with this meeting, my smartphone knows where I'm going next. I'm going to Gurgaon. When I finish my talk, my smartphone knows, because the minute I leave this podium, it knows that I've finished. And imagine my smartphone lets my car know, and my car comes, and Sanjay is no longer in my car. He's not driving it. It's driving itself. This is a project that we have. It's called Driverless Car. It's a car that drives itself. If you go to California and you go to Mountain View, it's driving around by itself. It's on the highways. And this is what software can do to industries. And it's just one example of what software is going to do to every industry, including many of the industries that I'm sure all of you are in. And this is actually a prototype that we just announced at Google I/O about a month ago. So just take a look at this. It's a very different kind of car.
It was a big decision for us to go and start building our purpose-built vehicles for this. And really, they're prototype vehicles. They were a chance for us to explore what does it really mean to have a self-driving vehicle. But in the small amount of time we've been working on it, we have functional prototypes, and it's exciting.
Our lives are made up of lots and lots of little things. And a lot of those little things for most people have to do with getting from place to place, and in order to connect and do things, be with people, go places that they need to go and do things. And so there's a big part of my life that's missing, and there's a big part of my life that a self-driving vehicle would bring back to me.
This is a first step for us, and it's really exciting to see the progress we've made. The opportunity for people to just move around and not worry about it, it's going to be incredibly empowering and incredibly powerful for people.
I love this!
No steering wheel, just button, press, it's ready, and it goes. Now, what enables this? What enables this is innovations in hardware and software, right? Sensors. So it's got sensors all over the car. It detects everything around you. Software can start things go. It can do all kinds of things. And fundamentally, in our lifetimes, the next 20 years, software will become so powerful where it can do just about everything that humans can do, but better. And already what we're seeing is in one very simple use case, which is driving a car can do. So actually, if you go to the Museum of Science in Mountain View, you'll see this car. And if you go to a Google campus in Mountain View, you'll see them driving around. Obviously, it's very early stages. But this is an example, again, of the future is now, right? You don't have to ask the question, will cars drive themselves? Well, they already do. Now, can they drive themselves in Delhi? Probably not yet. Is it going to happen in our lifetime? I think so. Because it's actually, it's very much on its way, right? So that's really the first theme of what I wanted to talk about, which is technology is accelerating and it is fundamentally impacting how we live. And it's also not only impacting how we live, but it's also impacting many industries that we would have not imagined software could impact even a few years ago. Now, in terms of consumers, what's really happening around the world is consumers are becoming always connected, right? If you go back 15 years or so, you basically watch TV, you read some newspapers, right? I mean, that's sort of what you did. Then if you go back 25 years, if you go back about 15, 18 years even in India, a few million people were connected to the internet. You access the internet to a desktop, maybe you watch TV. But actually, if you look at it today, let's go to a developed market like the US, consumers are connected on n number of devices. They watch TV, but they're connected on a desktop. They have one or more notebooks. They have cell phones. They're increasingly being connected on wearable devices. Their TV is now interactive, and things like cars are being connected, right? So what's happening is we've gone from really having only 1 or 2 points of connectivity and 1 or 2 points of consumption of media, of news, of entertainment, to now being always connected, always in interactive, in modes of interaction, and being able to consume and interact pretty much everywhere you're in. And this has huge implications on businesses, because businesses are used to, if you think about marketing used to be, I do a 30-second TV commercial, I put it on television. So today, if you just do that in the US, you're going to miss out on a large part of the population, because they're actually connecting to the internet on many different kinds of devices. They are interacting with media in very, very different kinds of ways, and increasingly they're going to be connected just about everywhere you're at. And now let me show you another video that shows, again, how simple things that we do are changing even as we speak. Oh, sorry. Let me just show this video.
Does that?
Just got a jellyfish warning.
Try counting?
Let's go to Zuma.
More kids. Supplies, be there in 2. Okay, Google, what's the Syracuse score?
Okay, Google. Open garage.
So, that's basically, those are examples of smart watches, of smart shoes, and so on and so forth. It's all here. Now, what's interesting is, going back here, what's interesting is how many people around the world are now connected to the internet. In 2014, 2.8 billion out of the 7 billion people in the world are connected to the internet, and 1.75 billion of them have smartphones. That is a very, very large market. And I often get asked this question of how come we see companies like Facebook and Twitter and WhatsApp that can go from zero valuation to billions of dollars of valuation in a matter of few years. The reason is this, because when you have a large number of consumers who are connected on the internet, if you build something that's very interesting that hundreds of millions of users use, very quickly you build a business that's got massive amounts of value. What's interesting is when you fast forward just 5 or 6 years, we're in 2014, if you just go out 6 years, which is 2020, 5 billion out of the 7 billion people will be on the internet. And we will go from only having a few billion devices to almost 50 billion connected devices. Because,